This is one of those moments in the season where the news doesn't feel loud, but it's meaningful if you're paying close attention. And that's exactly where the 49ers are right now. Ricky Pearsall being back at practice for a second straight day might not sound like a blockbuster headline, but at this point in the year, availability is momentum. It's another sign that this team is getting healthier in small but important ways, and it matters because the margin for error is shrinking every single week. When guys start stacking practice days, especially after setbacks, it tells you the trajectory is pointing up, not sideways. What I like most about this stretch is the timing. This isn't September optimism or early season guessing. This is late season reality. The 49ers are navigating a short week, injuries that aren't magically disappearing, and a schedule that doesn't give you any favors. And yet, the tone around this team feels steady. No panic, no excuses, just problem solving. Pearsall being out there again reinforces that feeling. Even if his role is limited at first, just having another capable body available expands what the offense can do and how defenses have to prepare. This is also where belief starts to quietly build. Not the loud, chest-thumping kind, but the internal kind that shows up on Sundays. You can feel it when a team understands who it is, even when it's not at full strength. That's what this update represents. The 49ers aren't waiting to be perfect. They're learning how to win while managing imperfections, and that's exactly what playoff-caliber teams do. Quick question for you, and I really want to know where you're at with this. Does Ricky Pearsall being on track to play actually change how confident you feel about the offense? Yes or no? Drop that in the comments, and if you've been keeping up with these updates and like getting this kind of context without the noise, make sure you're subscribed and notifications are on. We're pushing toward 1,000 subscribers, and every single one helps more than you realize. As we move forward, the reason this kind of news matters becomes even clearer when you look at how the 49ers are winning games right now. It's not always clean, but it is intentional, especially on defense, where one play can completely flip a game. And that brings us to what might be the most important trend emerging at the perfect time. If you're looking for the clearest example of how this 49ers defense is evolving, you don't need to look any further than that D. Winters play. That interception return wasn't just a highlight, it was a snapshot of what this defense is becoming. They're not built right now to completely shut teams down for 4 quarters, and that's okay. What they're built to do is recognize moments, steal possessions, and make those moments hurt. That's opportunistic football. And late in the season, it's often the difference between good teams and teams that survive playoff games. What stood out about that play wasn't just the execution, it was the preparation. Winters didn't guess. He didn't freelance randomly. He recognized a pattern, trusted what he'd been taught, and jumped it with confidence. That's straight out of Robert Saleh's philosophy. He's always preached that defenders will get a handful of moments every game where they know exactly what's coming. The key is having the confidence to abandon your assignment for a split second and go make a play. That only happens when you know the system so well that it's second nature. This is where the calendar really matters. Early in the season, young defenses think too much. They're worried about alignment, leverage, responsibility. But as the year goes on, especially after a full season of reps, things slow down mentally. You start hearing checks at the line. You start recognizing formations. You stop reacting and start anticipating. That's why you see these kinds of plays show up more often in December and beyond. It's not that the defense suddenly gets faster, it gets smarter. Now let's be realistic. This defense isn't fully loaded. You're missing cornerstone players, and that limits the ceiling. They're going to give up yards. They're going to have stretches where quarterbacks move the ball. But if they can consistently capitalize on 2 or 3 leverage moments per game, that changes everything. A turnover here, a short field there, maybe even a defensive touchdown, and suddenly the math of the game flips in your favor. Let me ask you this. because this is a real philosophical question. Would you rather see the defense allow fewer yards overall, or would you rather see them keep generating takeaways at this rate? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you enjoy these deeper breakdowns of what's actually happening on the field, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. We're closing in on 1,000 subscribers, and your support is what keeps this channel growing. As encouraging as the defensive growth is, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. The next layer of this conversation is reality, because no matter how well you play, health still dictates decisions. And right now, the biggest question mark sits at the center of the offense. This is where the conversation has to slow down and get honest, because injuries don't care about momentum or confidence. George Kittle not practicing right now is exactly what you would expect given the situation. Coming off a mid to low ankle issue, on a short week, the priority isn't reps, it's recovery. The 49ers aren't trying to win Wednesday or Friday. They're trying to put their best version on the field when it actually counts. That's why this feels less like a red flag and more like standard procedure. If Kittle does play, it's almost certainly going to be with minimal practice and a lot of trust in how well he knows his body. That's also why this feels like a true game-time decision. The staff gains nothing by pushing him early, and, if he can't go, the focus immediately shifts to making sure he's ready for what's coming next. Short weeks force tough calls, and sometimes the smartest move isn't the most aggressive one. That same patience applies on the defensive side, too. Renardo Green being back out there again is encouraging, but neck issues are tricky. You don't rush those, especially when you've seen depth players step up and do their jobs. Last week was a perfect example. The secondary didn't panic. The run defense tightened up. Physical corners handled their responsibilities, and the entire unit stabilized as the game went on. That's coaching, and it's trust in the roster. Here's the bigger picture. This team is learning how to manage health without letting it derail performance. That's a skill. It's not flashy, but it shows up in December wins. They're not asking replacements to be stars. They're asking them to be reliable. And so far, that approach has held up. So let me throw this to you. If George Kittle is less than 90%, would you sit him and protect him for what's ahead? Yes or no? And while you're thinking about that, make sure you're subscribed if you want these injury updates without the overreaction. We're building toward 1,000 subscribers, and every new sub genuinely helps the channel grow. Because whether Kittle plays or not, the next challenge isn't about who's missing. It's about who you're facing, and this next opponent brings a very specific kind of problem that the 49ers can't afford to underestimate. On paper, this matchup might not scare you, but when you dig into how Chicago actually wins games, you start to see why this is a real test. Caleb Williams is a big part of that, even if the stat line doesn't always jump off the screen. He's dangerous because of what he can do when plays break down. He can extend snaps, stress coverage, and force defenders to hold up longer than they want to. That alone changes how a defense has to play, especially on a short week. What really fuels his growth, though, is the run game. When a quarterback doesn't have to drop back constantly, everything gets easier. Reads simplify. Play action becomes real. Bootlegs stretch the defense horizontally. That's where Chicago has quietly built a strong foundation. It's why Williams looks more comfortable, and why the offense can stay on schedule even when the passing game isn't perfect. But here's the real danger, and it has less to do with the quarterback than most people think. The Bears take the football away. They lead the league in that category, and that's not an accident. They're winning games because they capitalize on mistakes. You don't beat them by being flashy. You beat them by being disciplined. Protecting the football is the #1 priority, because one bad decision can swing the entire night. This is the kind of game where patience matters. You don't force throws. You don't give them short fields. You let your advantages show up over time. That's easier said than done, but it's the blueprint. And the 49ers know that, especially after seeing how momentum can flip in an instant. So I want to hear your take on this. What worries you more in this matchup? Caleb Williams extending plays or the Bears' ability to force turnovers? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you're finding value in these opponent breakdowns, hit the like button and make sure you're subscribed. We're closing in on 1,000 subscribers, and your support makes a huge difference. Because when games tighten up and both teams are careful, the edge often comes from a place fans don't always talk about enough. And for this 49ers team, that might be where the biggest advantage lives. This is where everything starts to come together. Because when you look at how the 49ers have survived and won through all the ups and downs, the answers aren't always where people expect them to be. Special teams have quietly become a weapon. Not just solid, but game-changing. They're adding real value every single week, flipping field position, creating points, and erasing mistakes before they turn into losses. That doesn't happen by accident. That's attention to detail, consistency, and buy-in across the roster. When special teams don't hurt you and then occasionally help you, the entire team benefits. That's something Kyle Shanahan has emphasized repeatedly. Avoiding disasters is step one. Creating advantages is the bonus. And right now, the 49ers are doing both. It's one of the biggest reasons this team keeps winning even when injuries stack up and rotations change. Of course, Brock Purdy's play deserves its own spotlight. When he's available, he's been as steady and efficient as any quarterback in football. But just as important has been the improvement behind him. The drop-off hasn't been catastrophic, and that matters over a long season. Bridging that gap has turned potential losses into wins, and it's a huge part of why the 49ers are still positioned where they are. And then there's the influence that doesn't show up in box scores. Gus Bradley's presence has added something intangible but powerful. The stories, the messaging, the timing. It's not just motivation for motivation's sake. It's about perspective, confidence, and reminding players why they play the game the way they do. When veterans and stars alike talk about its impact, you know it's real. Culture like that shows up when pressure is highest. So let me leave you with this. What do you think has been the most underrated factor in the 49ers' success this season? Special teams, quarterback depth, or coaching leadership? Let me know in the comments. And if you've made it this far, make sure you're subscribed and hit like to help us reach that 1,000 subscriber goal. It genuinely helps the channel grow.